Jeff Townsend Media. It's a huge, incredible, tremendous platform. It's not stupid and it's not fake news. Lots of money. Believe me, it's the best.
You get a kick out of that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You get the kick out of the power of AI. It just excites you.
Yeah, I mean, I use it from time to time when I'm working on something. It's funny, like, so I use it every once in a while when I cannot think of like a basic answer to a question.
Yeah.
It's like, if it's something like really intricate, I know I can't rely on it. But if it's something that like I should know by all rights, and I just can't think of it, so I'll sometimes ask it that, and it gives me the answer.
Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We have some people coming in. Can you hear us there? Looks like some of the live data is not showing up accurately for me. There's people commenting, but yet no one showing. Okay, now it's starting to show up. Now it's starting to show up. Can you hear us, CX Clips? You might have to help us out tonight.
Yeah,
Viv Games is having some issues with his electronics, we'll say. Yeah. So if you can hear us, let us know. We're coming in all right. We'll get ready to get going here in just a moment. Got a doozy of a live stream tonight.
Yeah, we're equally excited about our stories tonight. And I know mine is way off base from my normal stuff, so I'm excited about this one.
Reaching out to see if we sound good here since we don't have our normal producer on site.
Can you hear us out there in TV land? That's what they used to say.
Can anybody hear us? There's people watching. There's now the live stats are showing up.
That's good.
But haven't got a comment yet on how we sound. Hoping we sound all right.
I mean, personally, I can hear you really well, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually that's a good sign.
Hold on. I guess I could just check.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I would be pissed if it didn't work. I don't know about you, but dude, I would be like, what the?
Oh yeah, I've got quite a speech prepared here. Oh, I don't know
about you, but dude, yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, sounds good. That's one way of doing it right there, Wood.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded good.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to go ahead and kick it off?
Yeah, you're kicking it off tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and kick off the actual intro, then we'll get into it.
Yep.
Some shit's going off on my phone.
Yeah.
There's like 6 Mac things in the room that it all goes nuts.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's not live for me. I don't know why.
Huh. Curious.
I just watched it on YouTube.
That was weird.
So hopefully we're not having technical difficulties here.
Well, I hear echoes through my headset.
Oh, yeah. I'm playing it, but
okay.
CX Clip says it's not working.
Huh.
But I'm watching it, so I think it's working. It's live now. Hoorah. It's a miracle. It's live now. I think it was, must have had an issue.
Yeah, it must have been.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get going. All right. This is Jeff Townsend and Luke is joining me. We are starting another live stream of Your Scary Stories, the show where we share your scary stories or a collection of scary stories from around the web. And Luke, we have a absolute doozy tonight on the books.
Oh, yeah.
For one, I'll be doing the 3-parter tonight, and I went way too deep into my topic. It's going to be a jam-packed night of stories and chaos. And honestly, just a lot of ups and downs with what I'm bringing to the table, and I assume you as well.
Oh yeah, I got a 2-parter tonight, and it's one of those things where I can't really say that it's a story, so much as this is more of legend and myth.
This is how legends are made. Is that what you're saying?
We're talking something that dates back before Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, until today.
That's got to be for. I can't believe Viv Game. Can you hear that my phone going off or not?
I hear a ping every so often.
Yeah, whoever. Yeah, it's. I I can't. All the volume's down on all my stuff, and it just keeps happening. So if you're
Yeah.
pinging me out there, I am not able to get to you.
Busy.
Down. I have so much stuff. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I'm going to kick things off tonight. What I have in particular is information about the Golden State Killer. You actually sparked this by sharing the Night Stalker stories.
That was a good one.
I told you, like, hey, I'm going to talk about the original Night Stalker here, which is one of his monikers. That's what I'm going to be going into tonight. So I'm going to do things a little bit different. We're going to cover some general information, but and just for those listening and watching right now, this is some extremely bad stuff. So if you're sensitive to things involving sexual assault and things like that, this is going to be a really rough episode. Maybe you don't want to listen to it, I understand, or watch it. But I am going to go ahead and ahead of time here explain a few things. So this individual is known as the East Area Rapist. That's one of his things. I'm going to say the word rape very few times, as much as possible. Does that make sense? I'm going to replace it with sexual assault very frequently. So when I'm sharing these stories and I'm saying he, I will be referring to the East Area Rapist, the Golden State Killer, and we'll get into all that lingo of his name later. But I just wanted to throw that out there now. I'm going to try. I don't like that word. The algorithm on things don't like that word. So I'm going to eliminate it as much as possible unless it's completely relative to something into it. But besides that, it will be minimal. It'll be a minimal of that. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off here. I'm going to go into a little bit of an intro, then I'm going to play a video. But the Golden State Killer is one of the most infamous serial killers in United States history by far. Also known as a ransacker, Visalia ransacker, East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker. So he was active from 1974 to 1986 from Sacramento clear down to Santa Barbara County, committed at least 13 murders, 50 plus sexual assaults that's known and reported, and over 100 robberies. So, I mean, was very active. In 2013, actually, you ever heard of what his name's Pat Oswald, the actor?
Pat Oswald, yeah.
Yeah, he was married. She had passed away, unfortunately, but Michelle McNamara was a true crime writer that gave him the name the Golden State Killer. He had so many different names because he was associated with so many different crimes, right? And they actually didn't connect these till later, which we'll talk about. But she came up with this name, the Golden State Killer, and it kind of put a little bit more focus on the case again. Then within a couple of years, it was actually solved. But we'll get into all that. But I wanted to explain I wanted to explain the Golden State Killer part, where that came from, and give her credit. She investigated this for years and years and years before her passing. But I'm going to go ahead and play a creepy video to start things off. It's a sound clip. What this sound clip is the beginning of one of the victims being going under hypnosis and trying to recall the events of the attack one night. So this is like the build up in the first part of that here.
By the time your eyes have closed, deeper and deeper relaxed you become. More and more comfortable, more and more relaxed. Begin to experience a sort of a dreamy, drowsy sensation. So very comfortable and so very, very relaxed. And you drift deeper and deeper. Very, very good. Now, where was it, Lori, that you had dinner that night?
TV room.
In the TV room? Alright, very, very good. Now, after having dinner and watching TV, Lori, what was the first thing you became aware of? That something perhaps wasn't normal or wasn't right?
The leaves in the backyard.
Okay, is this someone we're walking on them? Or through them?
Yes.
Okay. What was the next thing you became aware of?
My dog.
And what did he do?
Barking.
Lori, did you see anything unusual or hear anything unusual?
Yes.
What was that?
I looked out on the back patio.
And what did you see outside?
A man.
Okay. Well, how would you describe his face?
Mean.
Very creepy introduction there to what we're about to share. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to highlight, because like I said, I went through some of the metrics of the amount of crimes he committed. I'm going to highlight the attacks, we'll say, that weren't necessarily successful as he had planned, right? So there are obviously over 50 of these sexual assaults that we're talking about that pertains to the stories we're going to be sharing here. And there were a handful of them that didn't go as he had planned, and I'm going to cover those. One of them did. That'll be the more graphic one of where, you know, he succeeded in the assault, but that will be needed to kind of explain how crazy, I guess you could say, he was through this spree that he did. So the first thing, we'll get some music going here. So I did want to explain that I am using this website called Quester Files along with Case Files. Quester Files has a great, huge, it's like an old website, but it has a huge detailed of all these crimes that were committed by him, like in great detail. So let's see if we can pull the music up. I'm going to try to present my screen too, if I can do that even. Am I coming through all right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take over here. The Quester Files website here, it does a great detailed explanation on these attacks, and it also gives you some visuals you can see here, not only of the area and the scenario, the story that I'm going to be reading. Not story, it's true, but not what I'm going to be reading through the events. It also has, in a lot of them, a symbol of what he was wearing or not wearing, as you can see there. So this is known as, this website calls this attack the foiled attack. This is from victim number 3 in Rancho Cordova, August 29th, 1976. This is approximately at 3:15 a.m. On a hot summer night in the early hours of the 29th of August in 1976, he made his way back to Rancho Cordova and struck again. The street was less than 10-minute walk and a 2-minute drive from his first attack 2 months earlier. The house was like the others he targeted, a single-story home on a quiet street filled with a mixture of hardworking blue-collar families and some families in the upper middle class. The bedrooms sat at the front of the house, their windows facing the street. The kitchen and dining areas were in the back. A mother and her 2 daughters, aged 12 and 15, were home at the time. At 3 a.m., the 12-year-old daughter woke up to the sound of moving chimes that were hanging from her curtain rod in her bedroom. She immediately glanced in the direction of her window and saw the silhouette of a man prying open the window screen. At the same time, he saw her too. She bolted out of the room towards her mother's bedroom. After waking up her mother, they both quickly went back into the young girl's bedroom. As they did, the figure outside ran away quickly towards the fence. The mother and youngest daughter went to wake the eldest daughter up, but she wouldn't get up. Presuming they had scared the would-be intruder away, the mother didn't insist that the oldest daughter get up. The mother and youngest daughter went straight into the kitchen to call the sheriff's office. The two huddled together on the floor and dialed the number. As the numbers clicked over, the sound of chimes echoed throughout the house. Then they heard what sounded like somebody hitting the floor. The intruder had not ran away. He had gone and found a chair, placing it under the bottom of the window to the 12-year-old daughter's bedroom. It was fairly high off the ground. When he appeared in the doorway in the kitchen, the first thing the woman and her daughter saw was his gun pointing straight at them. They then saw he was completely naked from the waist down. Through clenched teeth, they heard him say, "Freeze!" As he ordered the mother to hang up the phone. He approached them, stood above them. He pointed his gun right at their faces. In his other hand, he had a short club, yellow and wooden, similar to a police baton. "Who else is in the house?" "Who else is in the house?" The mother didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his wrist and shoved his gun away from her and away from her daughter's direction. He reacted by beating her over the head with the gun and the club. She stopped struggling. "Don't worry. All I want is your money, and you won't be hurt if you cooperate." He made them sit on the sofa. Both the mother and daughter described him in the same way. He was wearing a brown t-shirt, black gloves, dark brown ankle-high lace-up boots. When describing his build, the mother stated in a fair fight, she could have took him. His legs were tanned and appeared hairless. The daughter described his butt as stark white in comparison to his legs. He had some sort of utility belt, the mother described, like a lineman's belt. Her husband, who wasn't home at the time, was a dispatcher for the Sacramento Utility Company, and she recognized the belt as something similar to this. From the belt, he pulled out shoelaces and torn up strips of towel. He had come prepared, but what the police would later find out is he only brought enough for 2 people. This added with the questioning who else was in the home. He kept asking. Showed he was unprepared for a third person in the house. He told them to put their hands behind their backs, and he attempted to tie the mother's hands, but she was not going along with it. She began fighting and running towards the front door, dragging her youngest daughter with her. He chased after them, hitting the mother on the head with the club, but they were too quick for him. Screaming, they ran out the door to their neighbor's house, pounding on their door. As they did, a neighbor from across the street peered out her window to see what all the commotion was at that moment. The eldest daughter came running out of the property as well, towards the same neighbor's door that her mother and sister were at. She had initially dismissed her mother's alarm, but she heard the intruder inside their house and punched out her own window screen and ran. The neighbor from across the street then watched the figure of a man, whom she thought was wearing white shorts, come out from hiding from some bushes. When the mother and daughters were safely inside the next door neighbor's house, the intruder removed himself from the bushes and walked calmly down the street. She described his style of walk as upright, straight up, kind of like the way a military person or police officer would walk. She was shocked to hear later from investigating police that those weren't white shorts she described. It was actually nothing more than an outline of his untanned skin. He had actually walked calmly from the house naked from the waist down. Police found no pants stashed anywhere on the vicinity, nor did they have any accounts of a car driving away. By this point, the sheriff's department had staff on police cars parked around the east area neighborhoods. There was a patrol car parked only 2 blocks away, but by the time it arrived at the scene, the intruder was gone. There had some new information which they hoped would get a clear picture of the subject. The hairless possibility of the shaved legs and his gun. So the hairless before a lot of the reports were saying that the first couple crimes he had hairy legs. So this is some new information to what they're saying. And then they're saying they investigated more and spoke with the mother in the house, and she said the guns matched those of an off-duty police officer. By far, the biggest difference in this case was the fact that the victims fought him off and escaped. The mother's head wound did require 32 stitches. The lingering questions for investigators were, did he go on foot into a nearby property and hide until he could escape? And he simply walked or did he simply walk a few blocks away to his own house? Did he have a bicycle or something stashed nearby where he put his pants back on and rode off into the night? For detectives, there were ongoing indications of a military link, the baton, the clothing he wore, and the firearm. Even though the firearm was described as looking like one a police would carry, it could easily be one a member of the military would. Plus, there was a stealth-like quality of his actions. Also, the fact he seemed to have a lot of confidence and no fear. 2 days later, the neighbor from across the street who had watched him walk away reported to the police that an intruder had entered her house previously. Nothing was taken, nor was she there to confront the person that was in her house. So that's the first one, Luke. I'm just going to go ahead and knock out another one here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is known as the interrupted arrival on the Questor website here. This is victim number 8, Rancho Cordova, October 18th, 1976 at 11 p.m. He wasn't content with the crime he had already committed earlier that morning, victim number 7. On October 17th, late that evening, he returned east of the American River, back to the neighborhood of Rancho Cordova, only a few miles from the attack earlier that morning. At 11 p.m., a 19-year-old woman pulled into her driveway. She had worked all day at the Sacramento Army Depot, where she was a receptionist. Her parents and brother were out, but were due home in 30 minutes. This was their usual routine on Monday nights. After pulling into the driveway, she turned her engine off. A small dog was in the car seat beside her. It was a warm night. Her driver's side window was down. As she gathered her purse, a gloved hand came through the window and covered her mouth. A man wearing a gray mask whispered angrily, "Don't move, or I'll kill you." He opened the door and dragged her from the car. She was struggling and trying to get away as her little dog sat in the car and watched the attack unfold. When the woman felt the blade of a knife against her throat, she went still and stopped struggling. "I just want your car and money. If you don't stop fighting, I'll cut you up." The woman was dragged into her dark yard and pushed to the ground. He had some cord with him. She couldn't see it. It was actually her own house's clothesline from outside, which she had cut before she pulled up. In a struggle, she cut her elbow and she bled as he tied the clothesline tightly around her wrist. He then ordered her to get up and he pushed her around to the side of her house, into her neighbor's backyard. He forced her to the ground. This is where she noticed, laying on the ground, some type of rag strips laid out. They were in perfect lines. He took one of the strips of rag and blindfolded her. He threatened her continuously with his knife as he went through her purse. Finding no money, he took her keys out and said, "If you move, blam, blam, blam." Then everything went quiet. She lay completely still, too terrified to move. She then heard the familiar sound of her car start up and drive off down the street. She wasted no time in getting herself free from the bindings, which she didn't find it too hard to do. After freeing herself, she ran inside to call the police. She couldn't see her dog. She assumed it ran off scared. This was the first time he did what he said he was going to do, steal her money. Although she didn't have any, he looked for it, and then he took her car. It didn't seem like at the time, but the woman had no idea how lucky she was. When police arrived, they were told a similar description from all the previous other attacks. The strips of towel they found laid out neatly in the neighbor's yard told them that he was indeed hoping for one of his usual attacks. They thought the neighbors had been the target possibly, and that the woman disrupted him when she pulled into her driveway. But then they found out the neighbors were an elderly couple. With that information, they had no idea what to think. It seemed like a plan that had gone wrong. He was hiding in the bushes about to attack when the victim pulled into her driveway, disturbing him. Or maybe he thought the young woman had seen him. But the neighbors being elderly didn't really make sense. It certainly wasn't his usual MO. The most puzzling thing was that the need to steal her car. The car was located just a few blocks away, very close to the locations of the first and third attacks. The unharmed dog was found in the trunk of the car. This was the woman's normal routine. She would only be home alone for about 30 minutes before the rest of her family returned on Monday night. If he had stalked her and she was the intended target, he would have been aware of this. All his attacks up to that point seemed to have been longer for 30 minutes. Seeing how no sexual assault had taken place, the usual detectives were not called to the scene. Later, overhearing about the incident, they began investigating this. So, when this happened, they decided that this was 8 attacks in, that they were going to hold a meeting in the community to talk about this. They were really conflicted with doing this, how they're going to approach it. They didn't want to scare the people, right? But they wanted to get some thought out there. So the police tell the public. The sheriff's department felt they needed the public to be reminded of some general safety tips without alarming anyone. A violent sexual predator was on the loose, but they didn't want a state of panic, and they didn't want to alert the offender. The sheriff's department decided to hold a crime prevention seminar at the Del Deo parents meeting. Critical detectives that had been investigating the case were there. That night, 500-something parents and community members were present. The seminar was going well until some members of the community started asking questions related to the rumors of a serial sexual predator being on the loose. The officers were obligated to listen and speak truthfully, and that was the moment the community realized that no one was safe. Near the end of the meeting, one man, sitting with his wife, who lived directly across the road from the school, stood up and questioned why the criminal had not been caught. He claimed that police must not be telling the truth and stated that if a man was present, no man would stand by and let his wife be assaulted. He, for one, certainly wouldn't. Detective quote, strutting up and down the aisle, he loudly proclaimed that in Italy, where he was from, this kind of thing would not be tolerated and would be dealt with quickly. He made a few more crude comments, then shut up and left. The officers assured the public that they were trying to do all they could. They advised them of the things they could do to improve the security. The following day, the Sacramento Bee newspaper printed its first news report. Men hunted as a suspect in 8 sexual assaults. So before we go into discussion here, some MOs for this East area guy. So he seemed to follow a script. He would say the same thing over and over again. All I want is food and money. Those are common phrases, right? If you comply, I won't hurt you. Rummaging through them drawers, ransacking their stuff in their house. The weird part is he would take things that had little to no value. Maybe some cheap earrings, like one out of the set, just strange things, right? He wasn't actually getting any value from these thefts that he was doing. Some of the more messed up things he would do is this would last for hours. He would go rummage through their kitchen, eat, take the food outside, eat, relax, come back, continue the assault when he had stopped. Did a lot of weird stuff. And when he got later onto this, he was actually setting dishes on people's back when he tied them up. So if they moved, he'd hear the glass move, right? And he would know they were trying to get out of their binds or trying to move. You could hear this across the house. So that was one of his theories. And even more creepy, the detectives investigating this realized that a lot of the time he had broken into these houses before. And a lot of the times he had brought his own bindings and hid them under beds, couches, things like that. So later when he came back, he would be prepared. He would also take out screens, unlock windows, unlock doors, pry things open before time. So when it came back to assault later, everything was ready for him. It seemed as if he would spend a significant amount of time, I guess, watching, stalking, and really getting all the information he could for these crimes he was committing. So the stories I'm sharing are where he has failed at the attempts that he's doing. Your thoughts so far? I know we're not too far in, but
Well, so this is a tough one to read on your part, and so I'm appreciating the amount of work that you put in so far, because this is a rough one to go through. So I'm listening to it. I'm like, man, this is the only way to handle this type of topic is to be as clinical as possible.
yeah.
And I feel like you're doing. I just wanted to comment that I feel like you're doing a good job with that, and that's something that it's hard. I get more emotional about this kind of thing, and we're more like what I'm thinking about this like the whole time when the first part where the one lady said that she felt like in a fair fight she could take him, and I thought, yeah, I bet he could, because he's a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably should have gone that overboard, but it infuriates me. And so I hear this, and I know these type of people are all weaklings, and they're monsters, and the most grotesque things that can crawl upon the earth. And so this guy, I know the way she described him is probably pretty accurate, because it's not a strong person that does this.
Luke, this is a different time. These sexual assaults were looked at much differently than they are now.
Yeah,
They were even more terrible in the sense of putting it all on the woman, right? She may have been promiscuous, the way she dressed, and all. There was a lot of crazy things said. Like, you're dressed like that, maybe you were asking for it. This was not criminally the same either then.
Yeah,
but and there were a lot of people committing a lot of different sexual assaults then. Typically, they didn't go on as long, and it didn't seem to be as thorough as what this individual was doing. I'm showing on the screen right now. He targeted houses that were but back then in the 70s, these were a lot of startup communities in California. And he was targeting areas where he had a quick getaway, right? They're near canals, other things that you can see here on the screen. And he apparently is a prolific. I mean, he is crazy good at jumping fences and running. You'll hear more about that throughout the night.
Hmm.
But he seems to have an area he prefers with what he's doing, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that they're predators in every sense of the word. Like they prey on people who they feel like they could get away with hurting. And so like this guy, I'm certain that he was, what he did, he knew how to do it. And so yeah, this idea of stalking people, like figuring out where they are. But it's a weak, gross person. And like, yeah, so like immediately the topic repulses, but not in the same way of like I can't handle it, and more that like I wish, a time machine to go back, something like
Yeah.
that. But so like hearing it, and I'm like, this is a crazy story though. Like, I knew that you were going to be talking about this from what we talked about last week or last
Yeah.
time, and so like I'm not excited in the sense of want to hear it, in the sense that I'm excited that we're talking about this and we're getting this out there, and because this is definitely a story that needs to be known, and because we keep talking about it, but these human monsters
Yeah.
are everywhere, and it's important to know the type of person. It's important to know the history of these type of people, and to expose them for the monsters they are. And so yeah, this has been so far a gripping tale.
And we're just sharing the
The
unsuccessful attacks, except for the one we'll get to.
yeah,
But it just shows he's already what, say 8 in.
8 with that last one, yeah.
Yeah. So and the weird thing is he doesn't seem to have, and we'll get into it more. It's not like I'm doing this he did do it 2 in one day, right? In 24 hours once. But there doesn't, and we get further into it, there's not really like a pattern that can be found. It seems like he does it when he's ready. So this last attack in the driveway was very strange. What year are these? Someone's asked in the chat. 70s. We're up at 1970. Let's see here.
4 or is it 72?
No, we're further along than that.
Oh,
That's right at the top of the screen over here. This last attack we covered was in 1976 in October. So to answer your question there. Different time, right? Let's talk about that. Security-wise, home security-wise, a much different time.
It basically didn't exist.
It didn't exist. Calling the police involved calling the operator first. So it's not you just jump on and call him real quick either. So
yeah, and a lot of them had rotary phones too.
He busts in the house of one of these stories. They're still trying to even get to the point where they can get a hold of the operator to call the police.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, most of these people would have rotary phones, much slower to dial than a touch tone phone. And like I grew up in the early 90s for the rotary phone. So like I know these people probably still had them.
I think one of the scariest parts for me was the wind chime scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, hearing that.
Then hearing that go off after you thought he was already gone, crazy that mom just kept fighting though.
More power to her. Yeah.
Because getting beat over the head with that club and stuff, just keep going.
Yeah, that was just the best move she had, was to keep fighting back. And then, she got away, got her kid away, and they got to the neighbor, and just
I'm not trying to give him credit, but it also shows he knows when to get out of there.
Yeah.
He's obviously doing this for control. We'll talk more about that as we go through it. We got to move on because we got a lot to cover tonight. He's obviously doing this for control, and when things get out of control, he's uncomfortable, can't manage it, and he does seem to slip away, or he did constantly slip away. So
yeah, but in the strangest way, like they described him as walking away in like a military style without
naked.
his pants on.
Yeah, broke in with his pants off. Yeah,
what a monster.
Yep. And wait till we get further into this. I don't want to hold up that. I know we got a lot of other stories tonight. Let me start queuing up the music for you.
Alrighty.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Alright, well, wait a minute.
try it now.
How's it sound? Am I coming through?
Good. Yep. you're
Okay.
good.
So, as I said, my story tonight, or is not so much a story, in the sense that the mere act of calling it a story kind of lowers the meaning of what it is. This is beyond ancient history. This is to the time of myths. This is over 5,000 years old and is still talked about today. It's influenced religions, it's influenced nations, it's influenced our fiction today, and it's something that it's been around the whole world, and it's the evil eye. Now, the earliest writings and charms that protect it date back to over 5,000 years ago, as I said, before even the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh was written. In a town in Egypt, they had some prayers and charms you could do to protect against it. But they theorized that the evil eye dates back even further than that, to prehistory, pre-written history, to a time when, we were barely painting on walls. The evil eye is a charm or spell cast by a person that possesses it upon another human being. What it does is it causes misfortune of all types: health, financial, just any myriad of particular ailment that could befall a person. And it's done in different ways according to different societies around the world. Some say that it is just from envy, jealousy, that a person with the evil eye can use it. Others say it doesn't even need to be that. It might just be an evil person wanting to wish harm upon their fellow man. Others say that you don't even need to know that you can do it to do it. You might just accidentally do it if you possess the evil eye. In ancient Egypt, they had different prayers to protect you. They also believed that the eye of Horus would protect you, because it was the good eye. It was the eye of justice. And so you would use the eye of Horus to protect you. This eventually made its way into Turkey, in the early days of Turkey, and then up until today even. They would make an eye-shaped amulet that would reflect the evil eye. Before the Roman Empire, there was the Roman Republic. And before the Roman Republic, there was the Roman Kingdom. But even before then, the people in that area believed in the evil eye. And they had a different beliefs on how to prevent it. It was believed that you would use shame upon the witch or whatever person was that was casting the evil eye on you. So you would do a sort of lewd display to make them look away. So what you would do is you would wear a fascinarium. Now, a fascinarium is actually how we get the word fascinate, to distract, to whatever we do now with fascinating people. Well, a fascinarium was an amulet that you wore that was, to put it bluntly, a phallic origin. Then it would cause the witch to have to look away and not to focus on you. The ancient Assyrians, they also had a very similar start to the evil eye. They believed that it was sort of a thing done from envy, from one person to another. But in Africa, in Ethiopia, they believed it was not so much just one person against another person. It was a group against another group. So if you had a group that was all coppersmiths, maybe that group would be envious of the people who did another trade, and then suddenly that trade would fall to ruin. This was something that was, they believed there. In Western Asia, like in India, they believed that if a new brides were more susceptible to the evil eye because it would ruin their marriages. So new brides were hidden away because they believed that the evil eye might ruin it, and so they needed to protect it. They also did the same with their children. New children were hidden away. Ancient Greece, they believed that newborn men were especially targeted by evil eye. So they protected them by dressing them as female children, because they were worried that if a neighbor who possessed the evil eye saw them, they might curse them until they were adults where they could protect themselves. So early on in their childhood, they were dressed as female children. This is something that is also seen in Northern Europe, the Celtics around Ireland and Scotland. They also had belief in the evil eye. But far away from the eastern continents, down in Brazil, they too had stories of the evil eye, far disconnected from anyone else. And other countries in what will eventually become South America, all these ancient civilizations had the evil eye. They all spoke of the same thing: ruin. Things will be destroyed. These stories date back so long ago that monuments, civilizations, and whole peoples have disappeared to the crush of time. But today, the evil eye still exists. We still talk about it, and things are still being affected by it. So, a couple of the charm or prayers, because these are not just charms done by folklorists, these are prayers done by every major religion, and things made by every major religion. Islam is a big believer in the evil eye. If someone they believe is affected by the evil eye, you're supposed to say mashallah, which is as God wills it, and that will protect you from someone who is casting the evil eye on you. This is not something that is like talked about in like a random passage. This is throughout the entire Quran, and that it is still talked about today. In Judaism, they 100% believe that the evil eye was going to affect you. A bad neighbor with an evil heart, they said, could ruin your life, because the eye projects your soul. What you feel towards your fellow man, you project. So they made their own charms, their own prayers. One thing that they would make was a little lead scroll about an inch and a half in length. They would write a little scripture on it to protect you, and then they would wrap it in linen, and you would hang it from your neck, and that would protect you from the evil eye. In Christianity, there's a scripture that goes like this: if a person's eye is generous, then their whole body will be full of light. If their eye is evil, then their whole body will be full of darkness. In Hindu, where they don't necessarily even have the traditional idea of evil and good in their religion, they still teach today of the evil eye and how it could curse their children. In the West Indies, in the Caribbean, they created talismans made of beads from a certain tree that they believed would protect them from people who they call Malio, who possess the evil eye, that they would cast it on them. These things are so ingrained in humanity and have been around for so long that it's not so much a simple story. This is a primal fear that has guided civilization for millennia. Of all the things I have researched, I have never seen something that lasted this long and is so pervasive. The Turkish people were the first people to make a glass bead with an eye. They call it a nizar. It's another protection amulet that dates back all the way back to the ancient Egyptian Eye of Horus. They still produce them to this day because they very much believe that it exists. There are hand gestures you can make to protect yourself from the evil eye. And one I found particularly interesting. It is the devil horn, or they just call it the sign of the horns. This goes to ancient Rome, and it is simply a sign to gouge the eyes out of the witch that is casting its spell on you. There's no country on earth that isn't affected by the evil eye in some way. No continent, no people, no religion that I can find that has not have some mention of it. And they all speak the same thing, as I said, ruin, doom. You have to protect yourself from the evil eye. They all say, though, that it comes from other people. It's not from some demon. It's not some spirit. It's other people. The idea that it might all be from envy is one thing. Many different nations say envy is the driving force. A couple have said that it is fear that makes it happen, and jealousy. And as I said, not everyone knows that they have the evil eye. Now, I've seen an image of a person a priest from Turkey that apparently possessed the evil eye. And we could share it if you have it readied. The evil eye is something that has more than a physical trait, though. People say that sometimes you have to be able to do things like this with your eyes, but other people say that it is physical. It used to be believed that anyone had green eyes or blue eyes had the evil eye and could use it subconsciously or willingly against someone else. But all of them speak of a certain wrongness with the individual who possessed it. Not so much that they are evil, but there was something bad about their spirit. Maybe they were always morose. Maybe they were always sad and lonely. Maybe they just didn't fit in, and they would accidentally do something. Or maybe they were pure evil. Maybe they're the blackest souls on the planet, like the ones that we have discussed just before with the original Night Stalker. But this eye, this power, this thing that has existed since prehistory has plagued humanity all this time. bring this up to discussion now for a little bit, and we'll come back later and I'll talk about some of the modern day stuff and then also how it's affected our fiction when we come back later.
Crazy enough, this is my first time hearing about this. Such a prevalent thing is what you're explaining.
Oh yeah.
It's like a tale as old as time. I don't know.
Yeah, this, like I said, dates back. It's not even in the time of ancient history. This is time of myth. This is before written history. This is back in a time where we don't know everything, but they still talked about it, and they talked about it in every religion and everything since then.
I just can't believe I've never heard of this before. It seems like it has a much deeper meaning than one might think initially.
There is a theory about the evil eye that I will delve into in the next segment that kind of chilled me to the core.
Hmm.
And but it has to do with what the evil eye is doing today. Now, this is like I said, it's a thing that when I first heard about it, well, I've heard the word evil eye before. People say it sometimes, like, oh, that guy's got the evil eye, or something like that. You wouldn't think it's a big deal. You wouldn't think it's something big. But then I started reading into it, and I just couldn't stop. I was consumed for days. It was like a haze of me just like reading article after article and digging up stuff. And then it's like, I can't read this as one story. Like, I can find one story.
Yeah.
I have a couple saved, in fact, of one story of a person talking about how they were affected by the evil eye. And I will go into one of them, one or two of them probably in the next segment, but they're sad stories. They're stories of people who are genuinely concerned, and they sought medical attention first, but then they went and spoke to a imam. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but they're the Islamic priest, and they got treated by them. They said prayers. They show them prayers of warding that they should say. They said the mashallah, and they felt better. They got better. And
This is crazy.
so this isn't, to me, this isn't like a story. This isn't even like a one-off thing. This isn't something to be written off. This is something I feel the humanity has been fighting since the beginning. This is the oldest of old magics. This is the evilest of evil magics.
Don't know exactly where it came from either. Its origins.
Yeah.
It goes so far back we don't even know.
Yeah, it goes to the point where there's evidence that it's prehistory. It's pre-written history. So
Oh yeah.
so like there's no way to know how far back it goes.
Pre-written history. Just think about that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously, this picture's creepy.
Yeah. Far as I know, this person, I don't know the name of this person, but this is the only like image I could find of someone that they like confirmed to have the evil eye.
What about if somebody just had something wrong with their eye? Would they automatically think they had an evil eye?
I think there was evidence that they were actually cursing people.
Gotcha.
And
Where's this picture from? Like geography wise, would you say?
it was, I want to say it was Turkey. I actually had it written down, but I had to double check that.
It's all right.
Cairo. It's from Cairo. So
Okay.
it's from Egypt.
Okay.
Yep. And
It's seems like it's something bigger than everything. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying. Like, this seems like it's huge.
this is
How
why
come people don't talk? How come people don't like talk about this
I don't know.
publicly? Like, I don't hear about this.
So that's the thing. We're gonna go to a couple. We're gonna go
Okay.
down a couple of rabbit holes
Okay.
that makes me think of why there's a chance that no one talks about it. And if I'm right, yeah, it's bad news.
Oh, okay. So should we go on with the night then to get back to it, or
Yeah, I think so. Unless you have anything else to ask.
but you just got me wanting to hear the stories now, so I can put it because right now the thing I'm struggling with is putting it in context, right? Like I'm struggling to. I guess I need some examples, is what I'm trying to say here. And if you're going to give me those, then I'm probably going to have a lot more questions after that.
I will give you an example of a modern day person who suffered from it. And then I will also uh, speak to like some modern day charms, and
Yeah.
then also how it's involved in our fiction today, and then a theory that I heard that is terrifying, beyond terrifying.
Well, I would say I look forward to it, but I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious to be able to
Well,
use
yeah,
some
I feel the
examples here.
same way about this Night Stalker guy. So I'm
Yeah. I won't give you any relief from the
yeah.
evil eye. We can go ahead and get into it though.
Alrighty.
So going into part 2 of the Golden State Killer here, there were a lot of other MOs and things that he did. I forgot to mention this in the first part, but maybe it's significant, maybe it's not. You can tell me. Most of the victims of these crimes of his all stated that he had an incredibly small penis. I'm not joking. That's literally a known thing with this case. And another thing, and we're going to get an example here. He did do a lot of prep work, like I mentioned. He did a lot of this on the phone. Okay. So he would call people, nonchalantly ask questions if an individual was there when somebody would return, just to try to get information and pick up on people's habits. But one of the other things he did, which makes this creepy, is for years on out, he would continue to call these people that he had victims and harass them. This is an instance of this example I'm going to play, and it's extremely creepy. This is this kind of stuff he would do, though.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Absolutely creepy stuff. This is a common thing he would do. Back then it wasn't as easy to get something recorded. This was one of the few. There's a handful that got recorded, but this to me was terrifying. So he obviously wants to have complete control over them before and after. A lot of times beforehand, it'd be innocent things, like I said earlier, just like he was trying to get information. He'd make some sexual comments here and then, but the ones he had terrorized, he returned with these sort of things.
Terrifying.
It is. Let me cue up some music and we'll get back into some stories. We'll power through and I'll cue you up when we're going to discuss. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You can hear me. I'm coming through.
Yep.
Okay. This, we're going to pick back up at number 9 here. Victim number 9, we're saying this is the Quester website has titled this a revealing mistake. Again, this is victim number 9, Citrus Heights, November 10th, 1976, 7:30 p.m., so a little bit earlier on this particular one. A teenage girl aged 16 was sitting alone at home watching TV. She was on the sofa with her pet poodle when she heard a loud crashing sound inside her house, which instantly set her dog off barking. Before she knew it, a man wearing a leather mask with a hood with just slit for the eyes jumped in front of her, holding a large knife in a gloved hand. She screamed, which made him run at her with the knife at her throat. Through clenched teeth, "Shut up, or I'll kill you. I'll kill you and your dog." He forced her to her feet and bound her wrists behind her back with black shoelaces and pushed her out to the back door onto the patio. She instantly noticed that on her bike handlebars, other shoelaces were hung in a row. He threw her down and with another shoelaces bound her ankles tightly. "Don't move or you'll be dead." He then demanded money. She replied that she had none. He became furious and asked for her where she kept her parents' money, where her parents kept their money. He was also asked if she had a boyfriend. She nodded. He did something he had never done before. He untied her ankles and dragged her through the backyard out into an area of an open canal, a concrete canal. At this point, dogs in the neighborhood were barking like crazy. She pleaded, but he spoke over her. "If you're not silent, then you'll be silent forever, and I'll be gone in the dark." He threw her back to the ground and tied her ankles again. Then he walked off, came back, untied her, then repeated the process. He then cut off her jeans with his knife. He was acting very erratic, more than usual. He seemed confused and highly agitated. "This isn't working right." He then grabbed her face. She saw his eyes staring directly into hers. "I know you, don't I? Don't you go to American River College?" She said no. She went to San Juan High School. "You're lying." He pushed the knife against her throat. He then did something which indicated he had no idea who she was. "What's your name?" She made something up. He then stood up. "I have to wait for my parents to leave so I can go home." There was a pause. He bent over, pulled up his socks. "I'm going to take off in my car within the next 20 minutes. Make one move, and you'll be silent forever, and I'll be gone in the dark." He walked away. She waited for what seemed like forever before she got herself free and ran for help. When police arrived, they did their usual checks. They found that the girl who lived next door looked very similar to the victim. She was older, though, and went to American River College. They immediately reviewed the difference in the behavior and realized that he had acted completely out of character. They concluded he had made a mistake. He broke into the wrong house. The victim's neighbor was his intended target. When he realized his error, he panicked and he left. It was clear he had no idea how to act when things didn't go according to his plan. He ceased being in control, and it made him confused and nervous. The Evening News reported the attempted assault the next morning. The Sacramento Bee and the Union reported the same information. The attacks were now making headlines. So I'll keep going on here, but this is interesting, right? Because he's such a thorough of what he does. But again, though, he makes a mistake and he leaves. He doesn't hang around and try to commit the assault. He's out of his comfort zone and he leaves. Clearly, they made a connection here that he had the wrong house. He does all this research, he makes a mistake, and he removes himself from the situation. So again, I guess you could say not getting caught up in the moment completely. He seems to keep a clear head as one could have for doing such terrible things. So when this happened, interesting enough, there was a connection made to previous crimes. At that time, 2 investigators from the Visalia Police Department visited the sheriff's department and they offered their help. Try to get this off the screen here. So again, the Visalia Police Department visited the sheriff's office and offered their help. They had been involved in the investigation into the Visalia ransacker, who was linked to about 100 home break-ins between 1974 and 1975. Visalia is 200 miles-ish south of Sacramento and halfway between Sacramento and Los Angeles, California. The Visalia ransacker abruptly stopped his crimes in December 1995. Although he had ransacked nearly 100 homes, he had flown relatively under the radar, especially with the press, because he didn't steal anything valuable, right? Like we talked about before. And he never physically harmed anyone for the most of his spree. But that changed on September 11th, 1975. He broke into a house and attempted to kidnap a teenage girl from her bed. As he was dragging her outside, the girl's father came to her defense, but the ransacker shot him dead. Ever since the Snelling homicide, it was the name of the gentleman, the Visalia Police Department had regularly been sending out special patrols and organizing stakeouts in an attempt to find the killer, who had continued to rob homes throughout this after the murder here, and peep at residents in the same small area, peeping Tom, all that stuff, despite being wanted for murder right during this, which is insane. On December 10th, 1975, an officer at one of their stakeouts they were organizing finally came face to face with the killer. So again, we're going back to Visalia years before. They're coming to this area believing they have information as well. So this is what happened at one of the stakeouts. 2.5 hours after getting into position, a shadowy figure appeared near the garage where Detective McGowan was lying in wait. The subject, moving against the shrubbery in a crouched position, made it to the opening of the garage where the other officer was hiding. The subject stood, peeked inside, then apparently, not seeing the officer hidden inside, started moving towards the side of the garage and making his way to the back gate. Detective McGowan rose up from his hiding spot and silently began following him. He followed him to the back gate and observed the subject tampering with a lock for a moment. Then, capitalizing on the element of surprise, he clicked on his flashlight and put it on the prowler's head. The prowler responded. "Oh my God," he shrieked, spinning around and facing the officer. He squinted in the bright light of the beam. "Oh no, oh my God, no," he cried. His voice was extremely high-pitched and frantic. Police officer said, "Hold it right there." The subject, who was wearing something like a stocking cap or ski mask, rolled up over his head at this point, so not pulled down, reached up and removed it completely with his right hand. He then put it in his right pocket in a distracting manner, and he took off running. Going only a few steps, he used his momentum to propel himself over the gate, landing in the backyard belonging to the house where the officer had hidden in the garage. "Hold it! Put your hands up," the officer ordered. Also jumping over the fence, the suspect began running around the yard, almost in a zigzag pattern. "Oh my God, please don't hurt me. Oh my God, no," he continued to scream in a high-pitched feminine voice. The officer fired his service weapon into the ground, far away from the suspect, to act as a warning shot and to alert his partner across the street with this confrontation going down. The partner had already observed the subject and was on his way. Shortly after the weapon discharge, the prowler ran straight for the fence bordering the next yard and easily scrambled over it like it was nothing. He landed squarely in the yard and where his shoe imprint left an impression. Again, "I told you to put your hands up. Stop or I'll shoot," the officer warned him. He continued to track the subject through wide spaces between the fence slates with his flashlight. He held the flashlight up and away from his body like he had been trained to do. "Don't hurt me. Oh my God, please don't hurt me," the man continued to shriek. He stopped running, positioning himself only 5 feet away from the officer. He then turned to his side so only the right side of his body was exposed to the officer. "Look, my hands are up," he squealed as he raised his right hand. As he did this, he began digging around in his jacket with his left hand. Before the officer could react, the subject spun to face him and fired a shot. The police fell backwards from the force of the impact. As a partner arrived at the site to assess the situation, he saw the officer lying motionless on the ground. His partner radioed for help as he watched the shooter run through the gate on the other side of the fence. Meanwhile, the homeowner, his wife, and 2 visitors at the target house heard the gunshot. The homeowner looked out his window just in time to see a man running through his back gate. He charged out after him and quickly caught sight of the man, but by this time, he was actually walking, not running, next to the fence on the other side of the house. The shooter turned, looked at the homeowner, seemed to pause for a moment, then took off running and jumped through some hedges, then ran along the side of the yard. The Visalia ransacker crime stopped that day. He was not linked to another break-in or attack again. He was also never identified. The East Area rapist attack was 6 months later, 3 hours north in Sacramento. By 1977, it was clear that there were some similarities between the ransacker and the East Area. Some detectives had suspicions that they were the same man. They had similar physical descriptions, height, agility explanations, and both were described as being, like I said, physically fit, probably in their 20s. MOs were very similar. Also, neither of them took much value from the houses they broke into, but were known to carry a firearm, known to carry that club, and they committed hot prowls in the middle of the night. The Visalia detectives arrived in Sacramento. They were a welcome addition to the investigation, but it was something that would later divide law enforcement, as some, including the main detectives in the case, were adamant that they were not the same person. Now, before we go on to another connection that was made way later, let's talk about the scenario here with this cop and the shot. So what happened was the police officer held up his flashlight, and the Visalia ransacker actually shot his flashlight, and the shrapnel got and hit the cop's face, got in his eye, injured from that, and the force of the shot. Was not shot directly, though. The flashlight saved his life. He shot the flashlight. So, again, this guy, good reactions, obviously a decent shot, right? And the cop faced a little bit of criticism for this, but he said it really didn't seem like he had a weapon. So to shoot him in the back would be crazy, right? And you're in a neighborhood around people, their houses. So he felt conflicted on what to do. He was certainly honored for his service. He took a lot of time off after this, but I just wanted to explain that scenario of his flashlight got shot right by his head and he was tracking down this person. I don't think you could get any closer to catching somebody like that did there. Later on, this is where you can start to see a development of a pattern that this guy continue to escalate his activity to more and more risky. So later on, they found out that he was connected to another series of crimes, the Cordova cat burglar. So at night, after residents in the Rancho Cordova neighborhood of Sacramento had gone to bed. Now, this is the area where the East Area rapist is operating. So we'll connect all this later. But after the people in the neighborhood had gone to bed, he would open the kitchen sliding glass door and quietly strike. As he entered, he made sure to first plot out his escape. Then he would often head to the bedroom where he would linger and watch this homeowner sleep. Along the way, he'd grab purses and wallets and sometimes seek out special things like coin collection, car magnets, and photos of the female residents. There was also what seemed to be a sexual element to it. Women's lingerie would be stolen. He would use the women's clothes to do inappropriate things and leave the mess there. I'm just going to say that in the house. This cat burglar. In one particularly chilling moment, this is pretty creepy here. A sleeping woman was awakened to find a man standing by the door to her bedroom. After she sat up, the man said, "I just took $1 off your dresser." The female asked him to leave and not take the money. The man complied and left $2 on the dresser before leaving. He walked down the hallway and stared at the victim's 17-year-old daughter before he walked out the front door of the house. He grabbed a quarter and a nickel off the table by the door. In 1972 and 1973, in the eastern part of Sacramento here, this horrific cat burglar struck more than 50 times. So let's talk about this for a second before we go back to the stories. That is a crazy thing to do, to break into people's houses at night. You're doing it for that element of surprise. The ransacker did a lot of stuff when they weren't there, just tore the shit out of their house, right? This person would cause some damage too, but he wanted to be in there while they were sleeping. He wanted to have they call it like a hot prowler, right? In the moment, hot. This is some messed up stuff to do that. you can see, though, how his crimes continue to escalate. So if this theory is correct, which it's been proven, there's still some questions on the cat burglar part, but the ransackers, but he's left, like I just said, he left DNA at these places, right? So he started out and he escalated throughout about a 5-year period here, what we're talking about. So he's now committing sexual assaults in homes. And he had actually committed a murder of the man that he was trying to tempt the daughter. But it all started out with doing this cat burglar at night. I'll give you a second just to come back in for 30 seconds or so and talk to me how you feel about somebody who does these kind of things, this crime at night like that.
That's a lot to unpack there. It almost like while the MOs are very similar, it almost feels like a multiple personality of one person. This is a creature that is evolving and turning into something more, but like it's different MOs, right? And so it's clearly the same guy doing these different crazy acts, but it's like you get a little piece of it here, you get a little piece of it over here, and then it culminates into this ultimate darkness that he becomes. And it's like almost like exactly like 2 or 3 people merging into one. But
you can see the development for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like, because serial killers, a lot of serial killers, they only have one modus operandi. They only have one MO. They only do one thing. To evolve in this way from different things that they are getting pleasure from into this creature is something interesting. It's interesting to have this history of it, because like you don't get that all the time. A lot of time you just get like the highlights, the headlines of what did Jeffrey Dahmer do, or something like that. To get like the whole picture here coming together into one cohesive whole is really interesting. And so like this is like top shelf stuff here.
I'm going to kick out a couple more stories here of
Sounds
events
good.
here. We just talked about, and you said it, continuing to escalate what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
This next one is an example, and you'll get at the end why I shared this, but this is where an assault does take place. I want to note that here. But it's called Tactical More Risk here on the website here that I'm showing of Quester Files. This is what he wore that night. That's why I have it up on the screen. Victim 21, Carmichael Del Deo, May 17th, 1977 at 1:30 a.m. Neighborhood of Carmichael, close to attack 2 and 7. The homeowner, male, his father was visiting from Italy at the time. A couple weeks earlier, the couple found 2 BB pellets had been shot through one of their windows. They thought it was odd, but put it down to kids messing around, probably. They then found part of their garage door had been pried at the top, making it almost impossible to open. The strange thing about the place that the prying that had happened, that if you're familiar with that garage door, you know that there's a place at the top where you could slip in a tool and get the door open. Seemed to them that the person knew this, but was unsuccessful when trying to do so. They reported it to the sheriff's department, but heard nothing more about it. In the days leading up to the attack, the woman saw a man outside her kitchen window on her neighbor's lawn, carrying something. The man disappeared down the side of the neighbor's house. The days leading up to this, others saw a man wandering around the neighborhood, looking at the front of people's houses. That same week, a man was seen shining a flashlight near the victim's home. A brown Dodge Charger was seen parked nearby. No one recognized the car, but no one called the police or approached it to check out if what they saw was unusual. At 1:30 a.m., a hand gently pried the lock off the patio door to the victim's bedroom. He slightly crept elsewhere in the house. 2 children were asleep, as was the visiting grandfather. The husband woke up and noticed the figure. This family knew all about the crime spree, and this husband knew instantly what was happening. He pretended to be asleep. Wake up. Wake up. Look at me. Look at me. Do you hear me? The woman woke up as he shined the flashlight into her eyes. In the other hand, he had a gun. He was wearing a beige ski mask and brown gloves with slits at the sides. His shoes seemed very heavy. They squeaked as he walked on the floor. The woman pulled the sheet over her head and started yelling to her husband. The husband went to get up, but he shined the flashlight in his eyes. Sit the fuck down. He forced them onto their stomachs, and they were tied up, the same as the previous attacks. He forced the women to tie her husband up first. He then retied him before tying up the woman. The husband was trying to say something. He cut him off. Shut up. If you say one more thing, she's dead. She's dead. He reopened the patio door, and it sounded like he was rummaging through a toolbox. He walked back in the bedroom holding what appeared to be something similar to a money box. He rested it on the husband's back. He was taking deep breaths. If I hear anything, I'll kill everyone in this house. He left the bedroom for about 30 minutes. When he returned, he demanded money. The woman said her purse was in the kitchen. He forced her up and took her with him. She showed him the purse, and he shoved her towards the living room. She noticed that he had taken a rug and draped it over a lamp, creating a dull, soft light. He forced her onto her stomach, retied her wrist and ankles so tightly she felt them going numb. He appeared angrier during this attack, calling her by name and threatening to kill her repeatedly. As he prepared to assault her, he stopped assaulting her several times, wandered around the house for an extended amount of time, and he would return and resume the assault. When he finally stopped the assault, he went to the nearby kitchen to prepare food. He then told her he was going to take the food and beer and go into the backyard and eat. He stacked the plates on her back. He leaned in and he whispered, "If the plates rattle, I'll come back and I'll kill for the first time." When he returned, he seemed excited, kind of stuttering his words a little bit. Those fuckers, those pigs. I've never killed before, but I'm going to now. Listen, do you hear me? I want you to tell those fucking pigs I'm going to go home to my apartment. I have several televisions. I'm going to listen to the radio and watch television. If I hear about this, I'm going to go out tomorrow night and I will kill 2 people. People are going to die. Then he walked directly to the husband and he whispered angrily, "You tell those fucking pigs that I could have killed 2 people tonight. If I don't see it all over the papers and television, I'll kill 2 people tomorrow night." Then there was silence. When the woman heard her husband call out to his father in Italian, she knew the ordeal was over. When the police arrived, the dog was able to track his scent through the survivor's property to the side gate, then along the road to a small closed-off street 2 blocks away. Detectives had no doubt he had parked his car there. They found the house to be in the same condition that they have grown accustomed to. It had been ransacked. There was empty beer cans left and food wrappers in the backyard. The first thing the lead detective saw when he arrived was a for sale sign in the yard of a nearby house. There was also a school across the road, Del Dale Elementary School. They had been there the months before for the parents' meeting on crime prevention, the one where the residents first started asking questions about the crimes. When the detective walked inside, he was introduced to the survivor's husband, immediately realizing who he was. He was the man who stood up in the town hall meeting 7 months prior at Del Dale Elementary School. This was the guy who paced up and down the aisle yelling that no man would stand by and let his wife be assaulted. He, for one, certainly wouldn't. Did the man that they are looking for attend the meeting? The next day, the police debated whether to hold a press conference or not. It was clear that they were no longer able to keep quiet and give brief details about the crimes. He had now attacked 21 times, and they didn't know what to do. The survivor stated he told her that if he heard about the attacks on the radio or television, he would kill 2 people the next night. But her husband was adamant that he told him the opposite. He would kill 2 people if he didn't see all over the news and papers. They had conflicting versions. They weren't sure what to do. I'm going to go into the next one here. Condo Commando, victim number 27, Sacramento, La Riviera, November 10th, 1977, 3:30 a.m. He returned to this area about 3 a.m. on November 10th, 1977. He was watching a home on La Riviera Drive. The American River and its trails ran just behind it. A 56-year-old woman and her 13-year-old daughter were asleep in their beds. There was no man in the house. He woke the mother up with a blinding flashlight, bound her as he always had done. He told her that all he wanted was her money and no one would be harmed. The woman yelled at him, "What do you want from me? I'm an old lady." He left her room, went down the hall to the 13-year-old girl's bedroom. He shook the girl awake. The girl remembered saying, "Leave me alone." Only when she opened her eyes did she realize the person trying to wake her up was in a ski mask. He held a knife to her throat. This isn't a joke. He tried to turn her over to tie her wrist behind her back, but she pulled away and said, "No. Do what I say, or I'm going to stab you with this knife. I'll stab you and watch you bleed to death." He also threatened to cut off her ear. The girl and her mother had read the news articles about him, and they knew exactly who was in their house and what he wanted to do. When he threatened the girl again, she said, "I don't care." He left the girl's room, returned to the mother. He got a similar type of response from her. When he walked back to the girl's room, he attempted to assault her, but was not able to. It was rare for him to give up, but he did. He told her he was going to pack some groceries from their kitchen before he left. Before he left, he noticed the girl was cold, so he picked up a blanket from the floor and covered her with it. Your thoughts?
This,
Do you see why I shared that one story?
yeah.
So the man that actually did you recall? Did you pick that up?
Yes, he was there at that meeting when he said that, that he wouldn't let him, and he wanted to assault his wife or whatever. And
Yeah.
you know what's weird? What an odd and horrifying thing to happen. Like, this is one of those things that, like, you don't like. It's hard to think about it when you're in the moment. You know there's a serial killer in the area, but it doesn't really track to you that person is in the area, right? So there's a chance that they might show up to something like this just because they want to keep ahead of the game. They want to keep track of what people are doing. And so for him to say that there, he did it. I don't want to say he put a target on his back, but that it became the point that, like, he was going to be the next one this guy was going to target. And
He's also constantly telling them false stuff. Did you pick up on that?
Yes, he tells them
Like-
two different stories, or
Like the attacks before, he was talking about had to wait for his parents to get home.
stuff that is just weird. Things
He
that
would kill for the first time. We know back then they didn't, but we know he's already killed.
there are so many things that he says they're just plain weird and contradictory. I don't know that in the moment that he was thinking that maybe he could distract and pretend that he's not the same person or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if there's something wrong with, well, obviously there's something wrong with him, but like if there was something wrong with the way he could process information that made it so that maybe him himself didn't realize some of the stuff that he's done up to this point.
We got the chat commenting on, not a positive way, but how intelligent he appears to be.
Yeah, he's obviously intelligent in terms of the fact that he knows what he's how to do things and knows how to stalk and prey on people. My question is, does he know what he has done? Like, is he criminally insane and he is like,
Well, he calls them back and harasses them. So
yeah, like, is it possible that maybe he doesn't realize that he's murdered someone at this point? I don't know.
I just think he's just saying stuff to mess with him.
It's more likely that it's that.
Not connecting himself to the previous murders
Yeah.
purposely, so he doesn't want them to be connected, right?
Yeah.
And this went. It gets crazier from here, but it went so undetected that all these things connected for a really long time.
Yeah.
I think he's just trying to remove himself from the additional crimes to create more confusion and to remain fear in that previous community that he was still possibly there.
It's crazy situation. There's nothing good about this person. This is, a monster. And wow. This is quite a story.
I'll have these in the show notes, but again, this website's showing you exactly a mock of what he was wearing that night.
Right, yeah.
And actually the picture of the houses.
That's really interesting that it actually has all this information here.
Yeah, this is one of the most prolific, criminals ever. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I got a whole other big part, so we got to get to your stuff and move on here. Let me cue up the music for you.
Sounds good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Alrighty. So, we've established the evil eye has existed for millennia, and it's continued to modern day, as I've said. Throughout the 1800s and 1900s in Italy, it was very, very potent, talked about a lot. There was a pope. His name was Pope Pius IX. He was believed to be a possessor of the evil eye due to this cycle of disasters that happened around him. The Italians had a word for a possessor of the evil eye. It was jettatore. Jettatore was able to be just, you could tell a person was a jettatore by their striking facial features. They would have high arcing eyebrows and have a stare that leaps from their eyes. They would usually be involved in high society, successful people with tremendous personal magnetism, and they believed that Pope Pius IX was a jettatore. In the 20th century, in the early 1900s, going throughout the world wars, until today, Italy still maintains the eye. It can be stopped by the sign of the horns. In Northern Europe, they had a slightly different sign, and it was just the two fingers, the index finger and the middle finger, pointed like this. Still the same takeaway, but that was their way of stopping it. This was the preferred method, a charm to do, that you would point at someone with those fingers, and you would then would make the cross and spit 3 times. And a lot of times you'll see that in a lot of fiction. You'll see in TV shows and stuff like that where people go doo, 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 like that. And it all has to do with the sign of the evil eye. We have, as a species, humanity has internalized it subconsciously, the idea of the evil eye. We've, as I said several times, put it in our fiction. Sauron controls Mordor from the top of his tower via a giant evil eye. He looks across all of Middle-earth, cursing it with his evil powers in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series. The people who meet Jonathan Harker on his way up to meet Count Dracula make a sign to protect him from the evil eye of Count Dracula. We see it in various other media. We talk about it as a thing now, like it's not real. But part of me thinks that it may be too real and that people kind of cover it up. Some people do believe it wholeheartedly today, and it's mostly the religions of Judaism and Islam who are the biggest practitioners of protection from the evil eye. I tracked down a story shared not on your average scary story site or Reddit page. This was simply a Muslim page. This was just someone talking about their experience with the evil eye. And here's his story. My brother was memorizing the Quran. He was very sociable and popular and growing up to be a smart and handsome young man. About 8 months ago, he lost the ability to walk. His speech was affected as well. He was known for being a chatterbox. The doctors couldn't come up with an explanation for it, no matter how many we asked. He was in a wheelchair bound. Thank God, as always, it could have been worse. We decided to seek out a sheik, and a very knowledgeable one at that. He began religious treatment on him. He had it so that he could suddenly start reciting the Quran perfectly again. His speech still slurred. But now we've seen great improvements following his treatments with the Quran and different prayers. He was at one point completely paralyzed, but now his upper body has gotten all of his movement back. We believe it's a test from Allah. He makes a note. Don't assume something is evil eye. Go to a doctor. And if that fails, go to a reliable sheik. These people are not being driven by haphazard superstition. They are exhausting all of their options. And when nothing else works, they resort to the ancient charms and prayers that have protected humanity for millennia from the evil eye. And these stories, these other stories that I've seen, some are much shorter, speak to the same conclusion, that when all else fails, this works. I have heard a rather horrible, in terms of the consequences of it, theory of the evil eye today. Some believe the evil eye, you don't need to see the person that you are wanting to curse in person. You only need to see their image. In the days of social media, the days of mass media in general, whole groups of people that may possess the evil eye are looking upon others that they may envy. There is like I said in the previous segment, Ethiopians believe that it's not just one person against one person, it's one group against another group. So I have put together my theory of how the evil eye may work. And this is a little different for me because I'm not reciting anyone's stories. I've made a conjecture based on the world's stories. The idea is great nations rise and fall based off of propaganda. After the World War, and even during the World War, propaganda was a big deal. During the World War, Hitler made his grand propaganda machine cranking along, describing how they were going to destroy everyone, and they were destroying everyone in battle. A different propaganda machine fired up in the West. The United States began their propaganda, showing, not incorrectly, very correctly, that Hitler was a monster. Got a whole nation behind this cause of stopping this monster. This created, in my mind, a real energy, an energy of destruction that overwhelmed Hitler's own energy of destruction that he was wielding, perhaps not consciously. Now, this was done ostensibly for good, because we talk about monsters, and there's no bigger monster than Hitler in terms of what he brought to the world. After the war, we created propaganda against the Soviets. The Soviets then had hardships upon hardships, economic. There was starvation. For years and years, people were being oppressed by this dark energy that pervaded the land. Is it possible that unknowingly we created a way for people to project the evil eye on another person, another group of people? Today we see celebrities and various different politicians being affected by suddenly something horrible happens. We see things every day in the news of some new scandal of like this person having been befallen, doing horrible things in their life, financial hardships, making bizarre statements. All of this could be attributed to the evil eye. People seeing someone that they envy or despise, even if slightly self-consciously projected upon them from across the world, because we are so connected. And because of that, the evil eye has a harder, more horrible chokehold on humanity than it has ever had in the past. Millennia ago, we would have to meet someone in a different town. You would have to travel days. You would have to, know of these people from miles and miles around, but you wouldn't be able to know people from a world around. But now we can. And now the world is connected. If there are people that possess the evil eye, they can all see these people that they want to wish harm upon. We create this mass media project that is the internet, right? We've connected the whole world, but by accident, we may be destroying it. The evil eye may finally win.
So the evil eye is like a way of life, like a thing that exists in life, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Is something. I wholeheartedly believe that it is a psychological manifestation of will, and it is. I believe humanity has a latent connection to the divine and a creation, and that our subconscious and our willpower can accidentally leak up and project something.
So couldn't everything like evil be called other things besides the evil eye?
Yeah, definitely. There is obviously evil without the evil eye, but there is definitely, I believe, something to this ruination that is visited upon people that can take many different forms. Like I said, some people say that it's sometimes financial. And so you see like these people who are one day billionaires and the next day in shackles, like with Sam Altman-Fried, I think his name is, or the man who started that cryptocurrency thing that was then arrested by the FCC.
Oh, okay.
Or FTC. And so these are things that happen that maybe aren't the evil eye, but at the same time, millennia of people being afraid of the exact same thing around the world doesn't seem like it doesn't have some grain of truth.
It's crazy how many times you mentioned propaganda.
I'm a big propaganda guy. I like watching like stories on World War II and then the Cold War and stuff like that. I subscribe to a lot of channels that talk about it, and I actually like all right, so here's the thing. I don't like the portrayal in propaganda. I'm a big fan of the artwork in terms of how interesting it is that people were able to be duped into believing this. And so, like, I like reading it, I like viewing it, because I feel like if you forget it, if you forget that people use propaganda to do things that were evil, then you kind of are cheapening everything. So, like, I do look up lots of different propagandas and stuff like that, and so I have an eye for it, or from watching it for so long, and so it comes down to this, where I think it's very likely that the evil eye exists. It's also very likely that what we have created is abetting it, because we're now so connected that we see everything, and everyone's talking about how horrible the world is now because we see all these terrible things happening. But it's because we're connected now. Everyone can see everything. And so we see all this stuff, and it all starts to turn bad. To me, that sounds like the evil eye at work. It sounds like.
So you're saying we're turning it bad when it's not bad? What do you mean by that?
I think that because we're connected, the evil eye can make things worse faster, because it's no longer just one person at a time. Did I freeze?
You get the evil freeze.
Can you still hear me?
I still hear you.
Weird.
I can remove you. I can remove you and put you back on.
Yeah, try doing that.
Your camera's gone. You can leave and come back too if you want to.
Yeah, let me try stopping and restarting the camera. No, that didn't work. All right, I want to hit leave studio.
Yeah, then just come back. It'll keep. Yeah, I'm here, so it'll record.
Okay.
The evil eye just hijacked the live. It took Luke with it. You're witnessing something live and special here. The evil eye got him. I didn't know what the evil eye was until the last hour, but now I'm seeing its true power. The evil eye got your camera, I guess, dude.
Turn the camera back on, but it keeps like
You left all the way and you came back in, and did it work then on the main on your pre-screen?
Yeah. I want to try unplugging my camera.
You're not.
1 second.
The evil eye is back.
There I am.
I was
Whew.
explaining the power of the evil eye while you were gone and what it just did to this live.
Yeah, I had to unplug the camera and everything just now. Wow, that was weird.
You surpassed its limit on the length of this.
It's possible.
We're late to the night, folks. Here, what time is it? Eastern time. We are at 12:45 a.m. So
yeah, it's possible that I got cursed just now from revealing something.
You did have a bunch of shit flying in front of your camera earlier too. I don't know. That may have been the evil eye too. I don't know. You didn't see that stuff flying in front of your camera?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I had to go back and look at that. There was some stuff flying in front of your camera.
Well, it maybe I might be in trouble.
I hope not.
If I am, that proves my theory, and I hope everyone will protect me. I'm having a recording error and everything.
Nothing's wrong on my screen right now.
Okay.
What's it saying?
It says recording error. Open recording. Oh, it's back to uploading recording. Okay, well, that's spooky.
You've got some weird stuff going on now. Back to the story. It seems like such a big damn thing. Like it's everything.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to me up until now because I hadn't heard of it. So now I'm really starting to question and think about things that happened to me and if Evil Eye was involved.
It was eye opening for myself. not pun intended there.
So let me ask you this before we move on, because this is a lengthy stream, which is okay. When did you form this overall conclusion about the evil eye? Was this after much reading?
It was
much
after
pondering on it.
Yeah, it took me a few days. Actually, it wasn't even until today that I like finalized it. And like I messaged you a few days back talking about how I had a weird one for you,
Yeah.
and then I was thinking about it. And I was thinking, well, let me read some more articles. Get some more information. There's so much. I could have probably taken up all 2 hours. Like
I obviously have with my story, so it's okay.
like I honestly I could have really. There's so much to go over. It's a
Yeah.
never-ending rabbit hole because it's thousands of years of history, right?
Some good
So-
evergreen content we're creating right now.
Yeah, and so like when I was looking at it, I was like, "Hang on, there's something else here, something in between the lines." And it had to do with Ethiopia talking about how it was not just one person against another person; it was groups. And I thought, wait a second, maybe. And I started like reading other things, and so anyway, that was what I wanted to bring up tonight. And I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, I'm worried I'm right. And
It's a hell of a
I-
theory.
yeah, and at the end of the day, there's got to be something to the evil eye. Just because it's too long, too many people, too many different
You
types
don't
of
think
people.
there's just good and bad people in the world?
Well, that's the thing. The people who have the evil eye are bad people, but like they can visit a non-physical interaction upon you that causes bad things to happen to your life. So like they don't even need to touch you, they don't need to get involved with you, but they can make things worse for you.
Okay.
And so it's just this weird thing that so many people who objectively have not agreed with each other throughout millennia all agree on the same thing. This curse of the evil eye.
I'm gonna try not to think about the evil eye, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's probably for the best, to be honest.
What a
But-
night. That's all I can say. What a night of stories. This is like beyond a story. Like this is a whole philosophy on good
Yeah.
versus evil sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for this, Luke. Not gonna lie. It's got me wondering about a lot of things. Hopefully
It's-
you're happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone could be happy with that.
Oh
I
yeah, I
think-
don't think so.
But it's interesting at the very least, and I think it's something that a lot of people should look up just because you might have some questions for yourself.
Careful what you ask for, you just might get it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, crazy, Luke. Evil persists around us. Speaking of evil, I'm going to continue on with mine.
Sounds
Well,
good.
Power through a series of things here. Just let me do my thing, do my storytelling. You relax. I don't want to say relax. It's hard to relax when you hear this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's kick it off with a clip of something, and we'll go from there. This is a phone call that he made.
Police department, sheriff speaking. You're never gonna catch me, you scary rapist, you dumb fuck. I'm gonna again tonight. Be careful.
And he did attack that night. And we will queue up and get going here. Am I coming through okay?
You're breaking up still.
Are we coming through now?
Yes.
We just played the phone call that was placed, and he did attack this night. Tale of Diablo. Victim 28 Foothill Farms / Sacramento, December 2nd, 1977, 11:30 p.m. We have Quester file that relates to this up on the screen as well. I have all this in the show notes. He did, in fact, strike again that night. It was attack number 28. It occurred about 11:30 p.m. in Foothill Farms, in the same general area where attack 25 took place just 2 weeks earlier. Up over the Dwight D. Eisenhower Highway, 3 miles from McClellan Air Force Base, A woman and her 2 young children were asleep in the house. Her husband was an Army lieutenant assigned as an advisor in the National Guard. He was away overnight. The woman had been receiving hang-up calls for a few weeks, but they had stopped a few days earlier. Earlier in the week, when returning home, she found a door she thought she had left unlocked was actually now locked. She woke up to a bright flashlight. She was tied up with shoelaces, blindfolded, and gagged. He threatened to harm the children, but didn't go near them. She never saw him with any weapon, but it seemed like he was intent on ending her life that night. But he didn't. There was a group of noisy kids outside, and he seemed distracted by them. Some of the members of law enforcement were doubtful this attack was the work of the known criminal, and were treating this particular case as false. The reason for this was, in the immediate lead up to this attack, there had been a number of false sexual assault reports. All were followed up on, and in a few of the cases, the women confessed to making the whole thing up. Apart from wasting precious time, the police were now on high alert for more false reports. Unfortunately for this survivor, who was actually telling the truth, she bore the brunt of what a few others had caused. But this is now officially recognized as an attack from the man we were talking about. There were the usual suspicious sightings of a prowler in the area leading up to this attack. They weren't reported by neighbors until police came knocking afterwards. During the canvass, it was revealed that 2 women who lived together nearby returned home to find their power had been switched off. They had just moved into the home, and before they moved in, they were receiving calls at their old home. During one of the calls, a male voice whispered, "Hello, you're next." Jump to the next one here. This is the one I just had up here? Yeah. This next one is actually a very serious crime that was committed. Critical clue. Victim 30B, Rancho Cordova, February 2nd, 1978, 9 p.m. About 9:15 p.m. on February 2nd, 1978, a young married couple were out walking their dog in Rancho Cordova. The 21-year-old husband, Brian Majori, was in the Air Force and had just been relocated to the nearby base. Brian and his wife, Katie, who was 20, had recently just moved into their home in Rancho Cordova. He was waiting for reemployment to another location in the foreseeable future. The following is the account of which happened during their walk based on various witness statements as described by the witnesses. The main witness, a 10-year-old boy, watched from a second-story window as the incident unfolded in his backyard. Brian and Katie were apparently out for an evening stroll when their small dog ran off. Chasing after it, they entered a backyard where it was possible they probably surprised the prowler. The assumed prowler, armed with a gun, gave chase to Brian and Katie. A strong wind that had previously knocked down a section of the 10-year-old boy's witness's fence in the backyard gave him view of this scene. As the young witness watched, he saw Brian and Katie run through the damaged section of the fence into his backyard. Immediately behind them was a gun-wielding man. Brian made it as far as the patio before being shot to death. Having just taken one life, the man turned his attention to Katie, who was running for her life. As she ran, he fired shot after shot, each one missing. Actually struck the house there. He caught up with her at the gate. The boy's view was blocked at this point by a bush. The young witness heard a single gunshot, then he saw a small amount of smoke rise. Apparently, Katie's body may have been blocking the gate, leaving the killer no other option but to climb over, which he did as the killer cleared the fence. A curious next-door neighbor was stepping out of his garage. The two came face to face. Probably the only reason this witness wasn't not shot was because the killer was out of ammunition. The killer first ran down one block, then switched to another direction. He changed directions 2 or 3 times. A few blocks from the murder scene, a woman was doing yard work when she saw a man walking rapidly in her direction. He was staying close to the shrubbery near the front of the neighbors as he crossed their yards. When the car approached, he jumped behind the tree, pressing himself flat as he could against the tree, and remained there until the car passed. He then continued on his way, shielding his face with his collar, the jacket collar. He said to the woman as he crossed her yard, "Guess I must be trespassing." Later, the couple's dog that shot was found cowering in a neighbor's yard. This incident was immediately handled by the homicide division, who released nothing to anyone outside the established sexual assault task force that had been put into place. After all, it was a homicide, not a sexual assault. All the public knew was the young couple were gunned down as they walked their dog. The way this investigation was handled deflected away from the fact that everything about this resembled the same criminal police had been looking for. There was no indication whatsoever as to the reason why the murders occurred, but the logical thought is that the couple running after their dog into the boy's backyard interrupted someone about to break into the house. His parents were asleep, but the boy was standing at the window because he heard noises prior to the shooting. It's plausible that the killer was unexpectedly seen by Brian and Katie right at the moment he was about to break in, leading to the killer shooting them because they had seen his face. When the neighbors come from his garage saw the killer, he didn't have a mask on. Possibly he hadn't yet put his mask on when Brian and Katie approached him. So that is where another murder connected there. Let's go here to, this is actually victim 32. Little Pocket Big Clue, victim 32, Sacramento South Side, April 14th, 1978, 9:30 p.m. A woman had last-minute plans and arranged for her 15-year-old babysitter to watch her daughter. The woman also had older daughters, but they ended up going to friends' houses. The babysitter had been receiving prank calls for the last few months at her house. By the end of March, the caller was phoning the babysitter's sister and saying, "I've screwed your sister." She babysat often, but never received any calls anywhere but at her home. About 9:30 p.m., after the little girl she was babysitting had gone to bed, the neighbor's dog started barking. While watching TV, the babysitter suddenly heard two loud bangs. He was kicking in the door. He ran towards her with an ice pick. He didn't have a gun in his hand that she saw. "Don't move, or I'll kill you. Don't talk or say anything." He spoke in his usual angry whisper through clenched teeth. He forced her to the floor and pulled her hands behind her back as he bound her wrist. She begged him not to wake up the sleeping little girl. He threw a blanket on her head and said, "Don't move, or I'll stab you with this ice pick." He then told her he was just scared to take money and leave. He rummaged through the kitchen, then returned to move her to another room, where he left her again to rummage further. He did this twice before returning to attempt to assault her. He told her he wanted to do this for the longest time, giving the impression that he had been stalking her. The earlier prank phone call certainly indicated he had been. But what was odd about this attack is that the survivor was only there because of a last-minute babysitting request. As he began to assault the current victim in discussion, the phone started ringing. He let it ring out, but then it started ringing again. This time, he forced the survivor over to the phone and ordered her to answer it. He picked up the receiver and held it up to her. When the survivor said hello, he immediately hung up the phone. The phone rang for a third time. He became angry and walked the survivor outside onto the patio. As he started to attempt another assault, it was then that headlights pulled into the driveway. It was the survivor's father. He had driven to the house urgently when the owner of the home rang him in a panic, saying that the survivor wasn't answering the phone. The survivor's father yelled out. The survivor cried for help, and suddenly he, the attacker, was gone. During the investigation, it was discovered that a few nights earlier, the homeowner found a man fitting his description standing on the patio. So it appeared he was stalking both the babysitter and the homeowner. Neighbors in the neighborhood also had issues with a prowler leading up to the attack. The Sacramento River Trail was within a minute's walk of the house. Just after the attack, a woman fishing in the river saw a man jogging along the levee. He also fit the same description. This was a last attempt in this specific area of Northern California. After this, he actually moves a little bit further south. Then from that, he actually moves a little bit further south than that even. But this is attack number 48. We're jumping ahead like 16 attacks here, right? So we're jumping ahead into this timeline here. Danville failed attack. Victim 48. Danville, July 5th, 1979, 4:30 a.m. This one. Attack 48 was the final attack in Contra Costa County, 1.5 hours south of Sacramento. It occurred on July 5th, 1979 in Danville. The previous two Danville attacks were within 2 blocks of each other, but for this attack, he moved a good 10 blocks north over a fairly major road. This time, the couple he had his sights on actually had their sights set on him. Being well aware of the previous attacks and his MO, the couple formed a plan of which they would do if they were attacked. Their plan was that the husband would charge and attack him while his wife ran for help. Both of them had played this scenario over and over again in their heads, but neither of them thought they would actually have to carry it out. Early that morning, July 5th, a neighbor heard someone on their porch, but didn't investigate. Just before 6 a.m., the husband woke up to the rummaging sound in their bedroom. In the reflection of a mirror near the wardrobe, the husband saw him pulling a mask over his face. The husband threw himself out of bed and yelled for his wife to get out of the house. He dropped the shoelaces he was holding to the floor, which had been taken from the husband's shoes. This was about to be another situation where he was not in complete control. The husband yelled out to him, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" As the husband approached him, he took 2 steps backwards. The husband blocked him from exiting, and his wife ran out of the bedroom towards the front door. The husband was much bigger than him and continued yelling, "Get the fuck out of here! Leave! Leave!" His wife was running outside and screaming for help. The couple's neighbor heard the screaming and immediately called the police. He never launched at the husband, and he never made a move for a weapon either. He just stared directly at him through the jagged holes of his mask. The husband said his eyes were deep-set, boyish, large irises, and strangely full lashes. He just continued staring. The husband made a run for it, and he quickly escaped after the husband left. The location was actually full of cops just a few minutes later. The tracker dog immediately followed the scent, which is only minutes old, but the trail disappeared, and the officers realized they had missed him again. A prominent detective thought back to something he was told earlier when he shared some information from the case with a psychologist that counseled felons convicted of sex crimes. She took this information he gave her and discussed it with several of these convicts of sex crimes. She called the detective back and told him, after having discussed these things with the criminals, "You better catch him. He wants to kill, and he will. He just needs justification." So the next attack is actually a little bit further south, even of that. It's Goleta. We're going to go into that. This is the very next attack to that. The unsuspected victim, victim number 49, Goleta, October 1st, 1979, 2 a.m. 6 hours south of Sacramento and 2 hours northwest of Los Angeles is the city of Goleta. It sits 15 minutes west of the city of Santa Barbara and is the home to the University of California, Santa Barbara campus. Very few people from Southern California had even heard the crimes we're discussing. They hadn't even heard about the criminal. Law enforcement agencies were busy dealing with other crime in their own jurisdictions and weren't concerned what crimes were being committed in Northern California. Goleta had its fair share of robbery and thefts, but violent crime wasn't common. On October 1st, 1979, nearly 3 months after his last attack, Santa Barbara police attended the scene of a robbery and attempted sexual assault. It was 2 a.m. The couple who lived in the house were asleep when the rear glass sliding door was pried open. A foot rested on the base of the bed, tapping up and down. "Wake up. Wake up." A flashlight shined in their eyes. "Get on your stomachs. Don't move, motherfucker, or I'll kill you. Don't move or turn your head. I've got to have money. I need money." He then threw shoelaces down and made the naked woman tie up her husband. "Tie it tight, or I'll kill you." After the woman tied her husband, the intruder retied. He then tied the woman up, but very loosely. He constantly threatened them with, "I'll kill you, motherfuckers. I'll kill you." In fact, every line that came from his mouth used the word kill. After rummaging around the kitchen for the woman's purse, he came back and dragged her from the bed down the hall. He threw her down to the ground and retied her ankles. "Now I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut your throat." He walked away and paced the kitchen, muttering over and over again, "I'll kill him. I'll kill him. I'll kill him." He then walked down the hall towards her husband. The woman got up naked, still bound with her head covered. She couldn't see, but she knew the direction of the front door. She got to the front door, opened it. As she did, her ankle bindings loosened enough for her to run. She ran as fast as she could and started screaming, but she couldn't see. She came to an abrupt stop when she slammed into the side of the house. A gloved hand grabbed her by the face, covering her mouth. "I told you to be fucking quiet." He dragged her back inside and shoved her to the floor. After hearing his wife scream, the husband was sure she was being killed. He flung himself out of the bed, made it to the bedroom sliding glass door, and got outside. The intruder heard the door open. He ran outside and beamed his flashlight into the darkness, trying to find the husband. The husband was hiding in the bushes. The intruder couldn't find him, so he walked back inside to finish what he was there to do. But the woman was gone. She'd run down the hallway towards the bedroom. The husband got up and tried to throw his weight against the fence to break it down so he could escape, but it wouldn't budge. Hearing all the commotion, the next door neighbor turned on his outside lights to see what was going on. The intruder gave up and ran out the front door. The neighbor was an off-duty FBI agent. He saw the masked intruder run down the driveway, grab a bike, and ride off down the street. The FBI agent gave chase in his car, but the intruder lost him near some bushes a few streets away. Santa Barbara police found the bike in the bushes where the FBI agent lost sight of him. The bike belonged to a U.S. patrol officer. It was stolen from his house nearby around 7 p.m. that night. A black-handled steak knife was found near where the bike was dumped. Police found evidence the intruder jumped several fences, and they believe he ran across the nearby school grounds. In the weeks leading up to the attack, the victims had noticed signs of a prowler. They kept finding their side gates open, and there were often footprints outside their windows. Santa Barbara police reports described the violent botched robbery with intent to kill. They were looking for a white male suspect, 5'10", 5'11", with dark hair above his collar. He was wearing a checkered shirt and a dark ski mask. He had some kind of holster on his belt. He had stolen just $3 from the victims. Had the attack happened in Northern California, news likely would have made its way back to the investigators on Sacramento or Contra Costa task forces. It had been 3 months since he had last struck in Northern California. Being 6 hours away, the Santa Barbara police weren't aware of what was going on. They had no reason to believe there was anything more than a one-off attack. Although we wouldn't receive the name until some years later, Southern California had just seen the first attack of the original Night Stalker. Unfortunately, those are the last victims that ever survived. He never left another victim alive after that. This is when he gets the name the original Night Stalker. On October 1st, 1979, he broke into a home in Southern California and tied up the couple living there. Fortunately, neighbors heard the couple's cries for help, called the police. He fled the scene on a bicycle. We just covered that. He was dubbed the Night Stalker, but later renamed the original Night Stalker after Richard Ramirez. The original Night Stalker, after the scene we just discussed, went on to murder 4 more couples and a single woman in Southern California between 1979 and 1881, raping the women before killing them, sexually assaulting them before killing them. The murder stopped until 1986 when he sexually assaulted and murdered 18-year-old Janelle Cruz. Okay, so we're going to go into the video of his arrest, but there's a couple things to note here. There has been theories throughout time that when a serial killer starts this pattern of behavior, starts killing, they can't stop. The Golden State Killer is an exception to that because he never committed an unknown crime from 1986 until his arrest. So that in its own is very strange, right? I mean, that's very uncommon to just be able to stop your behavior. Let's play the video here of his capture.
Case terrorizing California for decades. Police say they now have the Golden State Killer in custody.
And they used DNA testing to find him. So many families are relieved this morning.
The killer accused of murdering at least 12 people, sexually assaulting more than 50. 72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo, former police officer, family man who is hiding in plain sight in suburban Sacramento. ABC's Whit Johnson is there with new details on this stunning break. Good morning, Whit.
George, good morning to you. Absolute shock in this quiet community that the man who terrorized California may have been living right here. The Golden State Killer vanished in the 80s, gone for decades, until investigators say a key piece of DNA evidence connected the dots just days ago.
The 40-year manhunt for one of the most prolific serial criminals in American history, perhaps coming to an end at this suburban home.
We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento.
Police say this man, 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo, is the elusive Golden State Killer. The former police officer allegedly responsible for at least 12 murders, upwards of 50 rapes, and more than 100 burglaries in California from 1976 to 1986. DeAngelo's name never coming up in prior investigations, but just 6 days ago, a critical clue.
We started some surveillance. We were able to get some discarded DNA, and we were able to confirm what we thought we already knew, that we had our man.
DeAngelo seemingly hiding in plain sight. Police surprising him and taking him into custody on Tuesday as he was leaving his home.
Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Gotta sum it up here. Joseph DeAngelo. After the murder of Janelle Cruz in 1986, no more crimes attributed to the East Area Rapist or original Night Stalker were committed. While it was believed the two crime sprees were related, but the cases were not officially connected until 2001, when DNA evidence proved that the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker were the same person. After the 2001 connection, the case went quiet until 2016, when authorities announced a renewed effort to capture the elusive criminal when he was deemed the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara, like we talked about. Let's see here. On April 24th, 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo was arrested and charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder in connection with the original Night Stalker cases. It's also revealed that he was strongly suspected in the Vancelia Ransacker cases. In August, he was charged with 13 kidnapping abduction attempts in connection to the East Area Rapist cases. He couldn't be charged with any of the sexual assaults because statute of limitations were in place then and had passed. He was 72 at the time of his arrest. Will explain some things. From 1973 to 76, he was a police officer in Exeter, a small town not far from Visalia. So he didn't live there. He wasn't committing these crimes in the town he lived in. He was doing it in a nearby town. In 1976, he joined the police department in Auburn, which is about 30 minutes from Sacramento. So he was, again, driving to Sacramento to commit these crimes. He was fired from the job in 1979 when he was caught shoplifting dog repellent and a hammer from a local convenience store. He moved to Citrus Heights in 1980, where he lived until the time of his arrest. He was identified through DNA sharing site GEDmatch, where individuals can upload their DNA profiles for services like 23andMe, etc. In 2018, police uploaded a DNA sample from 1978 crime connected to the Golden State Killer. The DNA reduced almost 1 million profiles to a single family with the help of other factors like age, geography. The authorities were able to narrow down to a single suspect. After he was identified, he spun under surveillance, like they just said. They got his DNA and were able to connect to that. Now, he was a police officer and he was a former military person. We won't go into too much credit about details about this guy, but a little bit of a strange upbringing. His family moved around a lot. His dad was in the military. He actually, it mentions him watching his sister be sexually assaulted at a military base in Germany, I think it said. Strange guy. He had a fiance that he was named Bonnie, that he was older than her. They were young and they had a rough breakup. The dad had to get involved because he kept going over to the house trying to intimidate her into leaving. As he committed some sexual assaults later, he would say Bonnie's name during it. So we didn't cover those cases, but that was mentioned a lot. I mean, not a lot, several times, and he would mention her name. So that they thought that was strange. No surprise that he was a cop. Then they interviewed his former employer of a cop. Apparently he was a terrible cop, was not thorough at all, very sloppy, very careless, which is odd, right? Because he seems to be very over the top careful with these crimes that he committed. There was one gap. It's weird though. So that all matched up with him moving around with his police career. At some point, he moved down south for a while. He actually has a daughter that's documented as being born from there. And that's when he was committing the crimes down there. He moves back up north. He's like a mechanic, like a local Walmart or something similar. Don't quote me on that. A lot of people are completely shocked by this. One individual calling him like he was like Uncle Joe to his kids. He was actually living with his daughter and his granddaughter at the time of his arrest. There are a lot of people in the neighborhood though that didn't quite see him like so innocently, I guess you could say. He was very annoyed by a neighbor dog, and he threatened the owner if the dog didn't shut up, he would unload death on them and the dog, whatever that means, unload death. So he definitely had some weird tendencies. He was seen cutting his grass with scissors. He was so anal about the precision of it. Just a strange individual, but after a 40-year chase of this criminal, they're able to finally catch him. And he admitted to these crimes in court. The victims got to come face to face with him, but you know how that is. They get to talk about how they feel and all that. He did issue an apology, though, and we'll end it with that.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any questions that you have or comments? I can certainly answer a lot of things about this case.
This is one of those things where I don't really necessarily have questions because I you know, there's a point in time where you learn enough about a person for what they've done, with what you've revealed here, that you don't need to know more about them. But
yeah, I try not to make that be the. But it answers some questions, though.
Yeah, and what I have comment-wise, though, is a lot of it starts to make sense when you start to realize that he was a former police officer. Like, a lot of his actions and a lot of ways he did things. To comment on his former boss or whatever saying that he was a sloppy police officer, I feel like that is probably something that was said in a retrospect to like cover up for what, like something. I feel like
he did give some examples too.
Did he? It feels like this guy didn't seem like he was sloppy at anything. In terms of what he could do, he seemed like he knew what he wanted.
Still married, by the way, when he was arrested, although they had been separated. I don't think they even live together anymore.
That's interesting.
To a lawyer.
Yeah. That is really interesting. I will say this is one of the most intriguing cases of a serial killer ever, just because of the length of time in between.
What do you think about his ability to stop?
That's the strangest part.
I think it's when he started, the kids and stuff, he just stopped.
I'm trying to think of any other one that did. I could be wrong, but did Zodiac ever get caught? I don't remember if he ever got caught. So, like, he might be the only other one that I've ever heard of that just stopped and disappeared, as far as we know. I mean, obviously, maybe he changed his whole MO up and, started doing something completely different and didn't get attributed to him. I don't know. So this guy is, like, atypical for sure.
Very, very thorough, but he did not, I guess, anticipate technology advances in DNA, huh?
Well, he probably figured he'd be dead before they could figure out anything after a while. I mean, nearly was 72 years old. That's, kind of impossible to foresee. And it's possible that he just felt like, after 1986, after he stopped, a few years passed, he figured he was in the clear, that no one would ever find him out. I wonder why he uploaded his DNA to something like that.
It's a family member. He didn't.
Oh, a family member.
It just takes somebody with similar DNA. They're able to pick up on a family tree.
That's interesting. So I didn't quite catch that. I was thinking that he did it himself.
No.
I was like, what a crazy.
No, it was like a cousin or something.
I see. That makes more sense. And that's also an interesting thing, right? Because
it's very controversial, actually.
Yeah, because it's not his DNA. Obviously afterwards, I imagine they probably took a DNA sample to prove it.
The first thing they did was when this DNA came prominent in the 90s and 2000s, they ran it through the database where in California, they make all the convicted felons DNA go in the database, but he's not a convicted felon. So
Right. Obviously, he issued the apology. There's no taking that apology. Obviously, that's whatever. But it's an admission of guilt.
they actually made him go. They went through case by case, if I remember correctly, and he confessed to things that he couldn't even be charged for. They actually made him do that.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to close the book on this horrible situation after so many years. But it's also interesting that he went so many years without being caught afterwards.
Can you imagine being the victims and living that whole time?
Yeah.
Wondering.
And then, like I imagine a couple probably passed away in that time. And there may be others that we don't know,
These are crimes he physically could not keep committing forever, right?
Right. Yeah.
The running, the jumping, the involvement of avoiding capture cannot be easy. But he did this from the cat burglar to there for 15 years.
Yeah, it's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. And so, this guy he's up there with among the most terrifying human beings in terms of what he could do, and one of the most detestable in what he did, and one of the grossest in terms of what he was. He was a horrible, grotesque creature that pulled off some feats of ability in terms of his ability to get away and stuff like that speaks to his intelligence, but his deplorability makes you not want to associate him with human beings because of how horrible he was.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, at the end of the day, you have to admit that this was a human being and he was a monster.
We talked about the Night Stalker and living in that area. Can you imagine living in these areas at night?
No, that's terrible.
I find it interesting that the last two stories we shared were really the tipping point. He was very pissed off because he had no control. And I think he almost decided then that nobody would ever live again.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a shark with blood in the water.
Yeah. You could tell in that last one where he repeatedly was talking about, I'm going to kill it, like almost trying to build himself up. He had committed the murder before on the two occasions, but they were reactive murders.
Right.
He was reacting to being attacked or being ran down by the father. He was reacting to being in spur of the moment getting caught by the couple.
Yes.
This was different. I mean, it's all terrible, but this was like, it seemed like planned out and he executed it to plan.
Yeah.
Could you see? I just shared the stories mostly where the attacks didn't take place. I could have told stories, crazy stories. Like there was one story where he unloaded all the guys, like the guy had a gun at bedside and the guy woke up and he reached for the gun and he just dropped all the bullets out of his hand. He had them. Or he would he'd take their weapon or move it, throw the bullets in the neighbor's yard. I mean, there were all sorts of stuff like the pre-tied things in their house already, just things that he did in place. So it's obviously he had a really long run at this.
Yeah. Just terrifying.
But I chose that approach though. It's a little bit different and unique, but I also highlighting the people that are able to avoid that in such terrible circumstances. A lot of it by luck, it sounds like, and a lot of it by willpower as well.
Yep.
Crazy story.
Yeah, that was something.
What's ended on your thoughts on to me, it was terrifying. And it's actually the name of Michelle's book that she had wrote. But he said, what did he say? Be silent forever and I'll be gone in the dark.
Right. Yeah.
Is that the most terrifying thing ever?
Yeah, because he knew ahead of time that there's a good chance no one could follow him. He's clearly scouting the area out. He knows his way around the neighborhood. He knows people's schedules. to like an absurd degree. The amount of time he put into these attacks cannot be understated. He definitely was obsessive, and he definitely knew patterns. And so, yeah, he would disappear. And that's what he did, obviously, for years and years. The number of victims is absurd. To be able to disappear through all of that over and over again, this is just a creature of darkness. He exists in the dark. And so,
Well,
yeah.
evil eye.
Yeah. And so his ability to disappear in the dark, as he was saying, wasn't like a jest or something like that. He was serious.
You think he thought he'd get caught?
No, I don't believe he ever did think he would get caught. And if it wasn't for that odd set of circumstances of those, DNA websites, he wouldn't have been.
Thoughts out to the families that were impacted, and also his family, right? They're
Yeah.
impacted as well. Imagine that. I can't even imagine how
Yeah.
terrible that is.
Definitely.
Man, we're 2.5 hours into this thing tonight. We're going to wrap it up, call it a night. Crazy stories tonight. Longest recording we've ever done, but the most detailed storytelling we've ever done as well. As also.
Yeah. This is probably like our magnum opus, right? This is probably one of the biggest, nights for both of us. We both had like a clear vision of what we wanted to tell tonight, where it was going to be the biggest thing. And it kind of like a perfect storm. We both have these things together as obviously that explains the expanded time. I feel like if anyone who watched this live, this is probably the best night to watch it live.
Yeah. But post, I think this is evergreen content again. The Golden State Killer stuff will get.
Oh yeah.
This is stuff that'll be out there forever. So that's a good feeling as well, because we're going into a schedule here. In 2 weeks we do the I've got 3 episodes to freaking edit now, but in 2 weeks we do the Halloween. Then from the rest of the calendar year, we're doing story based on holiday themed. So
Yeah.
this was also like our get the stories that we wanted to get out of our system, right? Because we're 3 months away from a normal recording.
Yeah. This was definitely a night that I was looking forward to. Like when I started first looking this stuff up, I was like, oh, I can't wait for this. And then as I kept going, I was like, oh my God, I need more than one slot for this. And then we talked about it ahead of time, and I was thinking this is obviously one of the best ones we've done over the almost a year now, or almost a year since we started. And so
before Christmas last year, I think.
Yeah, so this is a big one, and it was just an absolute roller coaster ride of horribleness. Like our stories are not fun in terms of whatever. But sometimes they are. Sometimes they're goofy and fun and light. This was definitely a night of darkness and terror and soul crushing absurdity in terms of evil, but I think is one of the best ones ever.
Maybe I think Viv Games may have been spared.
He did get spared, yeah. He's gonna hear about it though, because he's got to make the thumbnail later.
Yeah, he's got it. He can't escape it completely. All right, yeah, we'll get on out of here. Appreciate you joining us live if you did. There's a lot of you on Twitter, especially. We appreciate it as always. I will do a better job about getting this content out post. I've got to buckle down and get 3 freaking episodes knocked out now. We will get it. We will get caught up. If you want to check out the content, go to YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's all there. YourScaryStories.com also houses everything. You want to submit a scary story you have that happened to you, do it there. Jeff Townsend Media also hosts a bunch of different kind of content. Also, going back, Your Scary Stories website live stream schedule is up. I actually have it booked into mid next year. I just need to update it and get that shared with you. But man, I appreciate another great week. We'll come back with some more holiday-based theme stuff. And this was like a good way to go out before we go into the holidays. So again, well done.
Yeah.
I don't even have anything to say.
No,
because
yeah, I'm
the
spent.
intenseness of this night. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm literally exhausted from,
It's
and
emotionally draining.
the amount of time I put into this shit too. You know, like
Yeah.
reading this stuff in the moment is like crazy. Then later you look back at it, you're like, this is it wears down on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like end of the day, you feel the effect of reading so much stuff like this.
Yeah.
But this is always a case I've been really interested in. So I'm glad I could. A lot of people haven't even heard of it somehow, but I'm glad I could at least spread the word of it. Not in the light of highlighting him, but just the survivors and persevering through all odds.
Absolutely.
We'll kick it out though. We'll hit that outro and get out of here, but let me find it. Until then, keep being you and keep being great.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?